Trump repeatedly criticized the EU for trade imbalances, accusing it of refusing to buy American cars and agricultural products, leading to a $300 billion deficit. He threatened tariffs, stating, "The EU is destroying us." The president also condemned European taxes on American tech companies and demanded that the EU increase its purchases of U.S. oil and gas, threatening tariffs if it refused. In January 2025, Trump proposed linking aid to the conflict country with access to its rare earth minerals. Scott Bessent suggested import tariffs for the U.S., ranging from 2.5% to 20%, but Trump insisted on stricter measures. President Donald Trump proposed lowering tariffs on imported chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals, arguing that this would reduce reliance on foreign imports and stimulate domestic production. However, his trade policy also included drastic tariff increases. From January 20, 2025, he imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, setting a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, temporarily suspending them for 30 days. Trump also demanded that the EU increase its purchases of American oil and gas, again threatening tariffs. The issue of Greenland resurfaced, with rumors of a possible U.S. purchase prompting Denmark to strengthen its sovereignty. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen secured support from Germany and France, emphasizing the need for European unity. In response, Denmark allocated $2.1 billion to strengthen Arctic defense. Denmark is investing in 3 Arctic ships, satellite monitoring, and drones to enhance control over Greenland. Frederiksen is negotiating with EU leaders about potentially deploying European troops on the island in response to strategic challenges and threats. Greenland has declared openness to cooperation with the U.S., but insists that its residents do not wish to become American citizens. Prime Minister Mette Borup Egede stated, "Greenland's future will be decided by Greenlanders." NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte proposed strengthening the alliance's military presence in the Arctic. The EU condemned U.S. actions, with Olaf Scholz and Jean-Noël Barrot expressing concerns over U.S. policies on Europe's borders. The EU and NATO decided not to respond publicly to Trump's statements, following Denmark's strategy of restraint to avoid escalating tensions. Meanwhile, the EU already faces trade disputes with the U.S. Europe's energy security has been under threat. Following crises related to the conflict country, Russian energy supplies were disrupted, Qatar halted gas exports, and Azerbaijan suspended deliveries. New U.S. sanctions on Russian oil and gas caused further price hikes and deepened economic instability. In response, the EU is taking steps to reduce dependence on the U.S. and strengthen economic resilience. A free trade agreement with Mexico has been concluded, reinforcing the EU's position in Latin America and reducing U.S. influence. Part of the EU's trade deal with Canada has been preserved to expand the bloc's economic network ahead of Trump's potential tariffs. These measures not only protect Europe's economy, but also solidify its role on the global stage. The new trade deal with Mexico is a key element in the EU's strategy for strengthening stability and independence. On September 17, 2025, the EU and Mexico signed a trade agreement to reduce reliance on the U.S. amid potential Trump tariffs. The deal eliminates tariffs on European exports, including tea, poultry, pasta, eggs, champagne, and chocolate. European companies will gain access to Mexico's financial and telecommunications sectors. The agreement also includes commitments to labor rights and environmental protection, as well as measures to stabilize supply chains. However, the document still requires ratification, sparking debates, particularly among European farmers. At the same time, the EU finalized a trade deal with Mercosur, creating one of the world's largest free trade zones for 700 million people. The deal removes 90% of tariffs, expands the market for EU car and chemical industries, and allows Mercosur countries to increase meat and poultry exports to Europe. Both sides confirmed their support for the Paris Climate Agreement and pledged to end deforestation by 2030. However, in Europe, the deal faced protests from farmers concerned about cheap North American imports. French President Emmanuel Macron demanded additional guarantees. The agreement requires approval from all 27 EU member states, but resistance from agricultural nations could delay the process for years. Historically, the U.S. played a key role in European integration. In 1949, Washington created NATO, ensuring Europe's military defense. In 1947, the Truman Doctrine established the containment strategy against communism, shaping U.S. foreign policy. The Truman Doctrine helped Greece and Turkey resist Soviet influence, laying the foundation for Cold War containment. In 1948, the Marshall Plan aided Western Europe's recovery and weakened communist influence. The Korean War, 1950–1953, strengthened NATO, and in 1951, the SHAPE Command was created under General Eisenhower, turning the alliance into a military force. In 1956, the U.S. blocked Britain, France, and Israel from reclaiming the Suez Canal, fearing Soviet influence in the region. In 1961, Khrushchev demanded the withdrawal of Western troops from Berlin, threatening a separate peace treaty with East Germany. This led to the construction of the Berlin Wall. During the Berlin crisis, the U.S. reinforced its support for the city. Kennedy increased troop numbers and expanded conscription, strengthening NATO. The U.S. continued promoting European integration, seeing a strong Europe as a barrier to communism. However, the Vietnam War, 1955–1975, divided allies. France opposed U.S. intervention, while others remained neutral. In the 1970s, the collapse of the Bretton Woods system led to currency crises. In 1979, Europe responded by creating the European Monetary System, EMS, to stabilize exchange rates. In 1986, the EU adopted the Single European Act, promoting a free market, though trade disputes with the U.S., particularly over agricultural subsidies, intensified. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 reshaped global power dynamics, strengthening the EU-US economic and security partnership. In 1990, the Transatlantic Declaration established political dialogue and reaffirmed democratic values. In 1995, at the EU summit in Madrid, the new Transatlantic Agenda, NTA, was adopted, with 4 key goals: maintaining peace, stability, and democracy, fighting terrorism, crime, and global threats, expanding trade and economic cooperation, strengthening educational and cultural exchanges. The NTA marked a significant step in EU-US relations, reinforcing their strategic cooperation.